Dwayne, I'll pass it to you to introduce yourself and say a few words.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dwayne Johnson. My pronouns are he, they. I am for visual description, I am a Black person with a beard. I have on some turtle style glasses, rim, I think they're turtle style. And I have on a purple sweater. I am the newest member of the team. As Alexia said, I am the Civic Engagement Manager, and I'm very excited to be here with AAPD and with you all. I'm going to throw it back to you, Alexia.
Yay, thank you so much, Dwayne. Okay, so we are going to start by just sharing some updates on our funding. So this might be a repeat of information to some of you, as we have lots of REV UP grantees in the room, but we were able this year to give out $390,000 in small grants to 72 organizations in 28 states and DC. This year, we received 98 grant applications, which is our highest number yet. And so the process was very competitive, and we're very excited to see all of your work. And we'll continue to provide updates on that. This year, for the first time, we also gave out operating stipends to our coalitions, and this is to help provide accommodations at all REV UP meetings and events so that all of them are accessible, and to provide stipends and payment to grassroots organizers. So thank you to all of our coalitions, and we're excited to see how these operating stipends can take our work even further. Next slide, please. Okay. This is, oh, no, don't look, anyone. Okay. This is a very exciting thing to share out with you all. This year, we are trying to better track our engagement through our SurveyMonkey form. So we are asking our coalition members and our grantees to report back to us when they host a voter outreach event. Tell us how many voters you've registered, how many voters you've engaged with, so that we can better track REV UP's impact. So as of April 2024, here are our numbers. So far, REV UP has registered 135 voters, and we've engaged 859 voters. So by engagement, I mean that folks have had conversations with already registered voters. They might have helped someone apply for an absentee ballot if that's allowed in your state. They might have given someone a ride to the poll, etc. Next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit of a state breakdown here for you all. Georgia is currently leading us in their outreach. They have hosted 18 voter outreach events, so big round of applause to our Georgia organizers. Texas has held 4 voter outreach events. We've had 3 in South Carolina, 2 in California, 2 in Minnesota, 1 in Illinois, 1 in Maryland, 1 in New York, and 1 in Virginia. If you will remember, for 2024, we have a goal of registering 1,000 voters. So on the right side of this slide, I have a thermometer graphic that has markings for 250, 500, 750, and 1,000 voters. And we are about halfway to 250. So let's keep our voter engagement going so that we can reach our goals. And I'm really excited and proud of everyone's work. Don't forget to report your voter outreach in our SurveyMonkey so that we can include you in our impact tracking and share this data with you. Okay, before we go to national updates, we're actually going to come back for a moment because we have one REV UP member who has to leave early today, but that we wanted to share an update from. So I'm going to turn it over to Anna from the Wisconsin Disability Vote Coalition to share their update with us.
Thanks, Alexia. I appreciate that. So I wanted to actually update the group on 2 things. One is a little bit more minor, I guess. I don't know. But we here in Wisconsin, we have a senator, and her name is Tammy Baldwin. I don't know if everybody knows that. but she's up for reelection, and the person that is running against her, his name is Eric Hovde. And Eric Hovde came out on a radio station. I think it was a radio station. Basically what he said was that most people in nursing homes die within 5 to 6 months of being admitted into the nursing home. And so people in nursing homes shouldn't be able to vote because they're not in the condition to vote. Obviously for us, it was extremely alarming, and also very inaccurate, as I know we all know. So I just wanted to, I guess, in case anybody gets wind of this, we did do a press release for our coalition and for Disability Rights Wisconsin, which is who I work for, and the coalition. And we did that in partnership with, I don't even know, 20 other agencies doing their own press releases, and I think we did one combined as well. So we really wanted to kind of blanket the media as much as possible so people understood that that's actually not accurate, that people in nursing homes certainly can vote. Whether or not they're going to die in 5 months or not, it makes literally no difference. And, it's just another, I think that we all do, it's another, I guess I want to say opportunity for us to correct the record. So we did do that. Unfortunately, he came back and kind of doubled down on that. But that's where we're at here in Wisconsin. In a lot of complicated ways here, which I'm sure lots of you are too. The second thing is that we did recently, I think last week, filed a lawsuit against the Wisconsin Election Commission. It was a lawsuit that we are a plaintiff. The League of Women Voters is another plaintiff. And then we have 4 individuals that are also plaintiffs in this filing. And the filing essentially, it's long, but the filing essentially says that some people with disabilities basically have to give up their right to vote in private and to have no one know what their vote is, because they can't, even with an absentee ballot, can't mark it themselves. So 2 of the plaintiffs are blind, and the other 2 plaintiffs have spasticity in their arms such that they can't independently mark a ballot. So what the request is to the court is that a system of electronic voting be put in place for people with disabilities that simply cannot fill out a ballot themselves and don't want to give up their right, their right to vote privately and out of the eyes of somebody else. So that's going to be, in our state, that's going to be a pretty big, at least I think so, a pretty big deal. In Wisconsin, there's a huge push for having literally no electronic devices anywhere in the polling place, including accessible voting machines. We had two places in the northern part of our state who they voted and decided that they would not have accessible machines because the last time there was an election, it was stolen because of that. So that's what we're dealing with here. And I guess that kind of sums it up. Thanks, Alexia.
Yes, Alexia, thank you so much for sharing, Anna, and for the work that you are doing. Also, I think I spy that you're wearing a REV UP shirt. So love to see it.
I
Okay. Yeah, this is exciting to hear about. I think a couple of states that have REV UP coalitions have sued for the right to have at least accessible electronic marking of the ballots. I know Florida was one of them. Their ballot return is only partially accessible because they mark it electronically, but they still have to print and mail in the ballot. And I know in Alabama right now, there's also a lawsuit on this. So this is very, and I think in Tennessee as well. I don't know. I might have misspoke there, but I'm excited to hear how that goes. And thank you too for your work responding to that comment from the candidate about voting from nursing homes.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so we are going to go on now to provide some of our national updates, and then we'll go into some more state and local updates. All right, so the first thing that I wanted to make sure that you all had seen and were aware of is that the Department of Justice last week released new guidance on the Americans with Disability Act and how it applies to voting. This is really exciting because they have not released any guidance on this in 8 years. And we know that there have been a lot of questions from states around that. So I wanted to just highlight a couple of things that are in this guidance that I was really excited about. The first is that the guidance directly makes clear that a person's guardianship or disability status can't disqualify them from being eligible to vote, and that states cannot hold people with disabilities or people with guardians to higher standards when it comes to demonstrating their capacity to vote. So I will be very interested to see how advocates and state leaders can kind of leverage this guidance to push back against policies in some states that still prevent people with guardians from having the right to vote or require people to take like a capacity test in courts to demonstrate their right to vote. Another thing that it includes is that it emphasizes polling place responsibilities around accessibility, including that polling places need to provide curbside voting. There needs to be communication access, including providing ASL to deaf voters or being prepared to communicate via pen and paper with a deaf voter. And it also further emphasizes ADA requirements for physical accessibility and for voting systems. And then another thing I wanted to highlight is that it emphasizes that people with disabilities have the right to an accessible ballot both in person and through mail. So I think that says a lot for those advocating for electronic ballot return for voters with disabilities. So this is a huge win for our community, and it would not have happened without many, many disabled advocates and advocates with disabilities sharing their experiences with the Department of Justice and advocating on this. So thank you all for your work, and please keep making noise on these issues. All right, the other rule that we wanted to share with you all is that the web accessibility rule is now final. You might have remembered that AAPD and many disability orgs submitted comments on this. And the rule is out now, and it says that state and local government websites and apps have to follow the Web Content Accessibility 2.1 guidelines. And they must be within compliance in 2 years, which would be 2026, if they have a population of more than 50,000, or if they have a population of less than 50,000, they have to be in compliance in 3 years. And this has really big impacts on voting because information on when you vote, what's on the ballot, how you vote, if you're registered to vote, a lot of people access that information online, and so it needs to be accessible. And one question I wanted to pose to all of you, maybe for discussion later if we have time, but definitely just to kind of consider and think about is, I know that many of our Rev Up coalitions, advocates, and partners, you all have relationships with your county officials, with your Secretary of State. And we know that rules is one thing, right? But having entities follow and enforce them is another thing. And so I think having this rule passed is a huge win, but there will be a lot of work for us all to do to make sure that it's implemented and followed for every county and state government. Okay, and I'm going to pass it to Dwayne for our next two updates.
Alexia, can you continue? I'm having some issues over here with my audio a little bit. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So the other two things I'll go through kind of quickly that I just wanted to share with you all is that the Election Assistance Commission in Rutgers University put out a new report measuring the impact of the Help America Vote Act on voters with disabilities. And I know that data can be really important in a lot of our advocacy, and so I wanted to share it with all of you. One of the highline things from it is that in 2000, which was the last presidential election before HAVA was adopted, the turnout gap between disabled and non-disabled voters was 18.8%. And then in 2020, 18 years after HAVA was adopted, the turnout gap had shrank to 11%. So that's still high, and there's obviously still issues, but it's interesting. This report looks at both the positives, impacts of this federal legislation, and where we can continue to improve. And then, because I know a lot of you care about data and kind of measuring our community's impacts, and I wanted to share another resource that Noor Pervez at the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network sent me, which is a report on surveying the landscape of disability data and statistics, and it kind of talks about how that information is collected. So I'm going to have April put the link in the chat, and I'll also send it to you afterwards. And then lastly, I wanted to remind people about the resources we have at REV UP. So I'll have April put that link in the chat, and I'll just highlight a few. Just a reminder that we make guides for every state and DC about voting with a disability in your state. We have a toolkit to help you conduct polling place accessibility audits. We have resources on training poll workers about accessibility. We have a sample survey on disability policy for candidates, a guide on hosting a candidate forum, a plain language voting resource definitions doc, and a report on voting during COVID-19. Okay, so I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you all, and you all are definitely being tired of hearing me talk. So we are going to now turn it over to the best part of our call, which is our state and local updates. All right, so we have a lot of folks sharing updates today. Our Wisconsin folks already went. So I'm going to read off kind of our order, and then I'll come back to the screen and we'll call on each of you. I'll spotlight you if you're comfortable being on camera, just so folks can see you. And then we'll open it up to kind of general community updates. But the order that we have right now is REV UP Alabama, REV UP Maine, REV UP Texas, REV UP Minnesota, the South Carolina Disability Vote Coalition, our Georgia folks, Missouri, and then Hawaii. So you don't have to remember that order. I'm going to call on folks. I just wanted to give you a heads up. So I'm going to come back to the screen now. Oh, wait. Wait. Dwayne, can you? Yep, thank you. All right, so I think we have Jenny on from REV UP Alabama. Jenny, I will turn it over to you for your update.
Thank you so much. My name is Jenny Lux. I am with REV UP Alabama. We had our advocacy day on the 18th of April at the state capitol building and state house. We had 2 reporters attend, and one was from AL.com, and it just so happens that on AL.com, we were the lead front page story on the 20th, which was Saturday. And then Alabama Reflector by Ralph Chipoco came out on Monday, April 22nd. Very positive articles reflecting what changes we want to make, such as pulling down on SB 1, which was signed into law, SB1 criminalizes helpers with helping people who are disabled, and it doesn't, there's a lot of gray area in the law in that it does not exactly specify certain things. Katie, did you want to hop on and say anything about SB1?
No, we just want to get rid of SB1.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There's a lawsuit League of Women Voters has brought up, League of Women Voters Alabama, that is, and against SB1 also. We are in the process of building our website and making sure that it is fully accessible to all people, be you deaf, blind, what have you. We're also developing our Facebook page, and our meetings are set. Anyone who is on the call that is in Alabama that wants to join us, please email Katie Toro. Her email is KTORO@drn256.org. And Katie has been developing a relationship with a local representative from her Morgan County electoral, and that has been very successful because with building relationships, she went to school with the legislator's daughter. So, but anyway, the two of us are speaking at the League of Women Voters of the Greater Tennessee Valley on Monday, and to better spread the word. We also have developed contacts with interpreters for our meetings, Zoom meetings, and we are utilizing every technology to include everyone. And that's about all I have, Alexia.
Thank you so much, Jenny. And round of applause and welcome to REV UP Alabama. They are kicking things off very fiery, doing a lot. So we're very excited. We've had a couple of organizers who have been connected to REV UP in Alabama for several years, and it's really exciting to see them join forces with other advocates and see what difference they can make, especially since some serious voter suppression legislation was just passed in their state. This advocacy is really needed. And I know that REV UP Alabama, you guys also advocated on a couple of different bills during your advocacy day too. So it's exciting to see that voter engagement connect to other issues that our community cares about. So thank you so much for your work. We're really excited to have you.
Thank you, Alexia.
All right. So next I'm going to invite up Molly Thompson from REV UP Maine to share some updates all the way across the country from Alabama.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Molly Thompson. I am the coalition lead for REV UP Maine. I'm also the voting access advocate at Maine's protection and advocacy agency, Disability Rights Maine. So we do have an exciting update from REV UP Maine. We are working diligently on our plain language initiative. And what that means is that we are trying to ensure that the ballot measures in our yearly referendum election are written in plain language. So in Maine, we have a referendum election every November. The State House can put items on the referendum ballot, And then citizens, if they get enough petition signatures, they can also put items on the referendum ballot. And so most of the items on the ballot are written at a very high reading level. We tested some of the language through software, and you need an advanced graduate degree to understand really what the questions are asking. And so we recently met with Maine Secretary of State, Shenna Bellows, and we had a really great and productive meeting, and we learned the different processes for getting ballot measures on the ballot. And we will be moving forward with getting contacts in the governor's office and working with the legislature, because after our meeting, we learned that most of the issue is from the measures the legislature writes, because they don't have any rules, the State House, on plain language. The current rules only apply to the Secretary of State's office. So we're really excited. Hopefully in one of the upcoming elections, probably not this November, but the year after, that all of the items written by the legislature will be in plain language. So yeah, thank you.
Dyslexia. Thank you so much, Molly. And we're actually doing really well on time, so I should have paused and seen if there were any questions or comments for REV UP Alabama or for REV UP Maine on their work. Okay, not seeing any, but we'll be on for a little longer. So if you think of one, we can always invite them back up. But thank you so much for sharing, Molly. It's really interesting to learn the different processes on ballot measures in Maine. Okay, so up next we have REV UP Texas, and they're going to share an update on some of the different voter outreach they've been doing. So I will pass it to if Lydia or Bob is on. Oh, I see Lydia. Hi, Lydia. Oh, Lydia, you are on mute.
Hi everyone. I'm glad to be here. Hopefully there's a man right outside with a leaf blower. He turned it off. I hope he doesn't turn it back on. So let me know. I'm Lydia Nunez Landry. I'm the regional representative of REV UP Texas. I am near Houston, right outside of Houston, Texas. It's essentially Houston. So we've been really busy. We have partnered with the Houston Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities and the Houston Commission on Disabilities, and we gave a presentation for the Houston Commission on Disabilities, and I did that in partnership with Sashi from REV UP Texas. We're planning on having an ongoing conversation about that. Recently, I did the Texas Center for Independent Living conference. I presented about REV UP. We had a PowerPoint. I have done a University of Houston class presentation that was not entire. It was more about disability cultural competence, but in that presentation, I of course talked about REV UP and stressed the importance of voting. I recently I did a University of Houston Clear Lake social work event where I presented about REV UP, and I set up a table and registered voters. I've done 4 separate events at University of Houston Clear Lake to register voters. We've hosted events at Assisted Living Center. I just got back from Dallas for the League of Women Voters Texas conference, and I was a presenter along with Ms. Middlebrooks, who is the president of the NAACP, Eileen, who is one of the vice presidents of the Texas League of Women Voters, and a man, and I didn't get his name. He was from Houston Faith Votes Texas Impact. I made a lot of really great connections there. Of course, quite a few of us from REV UP Texas testified in the omnibus voter suppression bill case, which was SB1 in San Antonio. And in that, there was a write-up in the LDF newsletter. Then we host our regular monthly meetings for other REV UP representatives, and also to recruit other REV UP reps, particularly like in an area like Houston. It's a huge city, and we desperately need more REV UP representatives who are willing to set up tables and register voters. I'm trying to think of what else. Of course, we have our social media page, and we do a lot of outreach there. And in that, we share quite a bit of REV UP information, information from the Secretary of State, Texas Secretary of State, the different League of Women Voters coalitions, and anything else pertaining to voting and voting rights. And I think that's about it. I know before they were, AAPD was tracking voter registration. I had done quite a lot in October, September, August. For 3 days, I was at the Abilities Expo in Houston, where there are thousands of people. We had a REV UP table set up, and that was really elucidating because with so many people with SB1, there's just a lot of misinformation, disinformation, confusion, and so we were able to clarify that for some people. Right now, I am reaching out to every group imaginable to just partner with, show up at their events. Sometimes it's far easier for me, a person in a power chair who, I have difficulties moving around and driving places, to just show up and register voters with the League of Women Voters and hand out our REV UP, our REV UP information and the Disability Rights Texas information on voter rights. So I think that's about it.
Thank you so much, Lydia, for all your work. I know it's like kind of doesn't feel like a coincidence that in Alabama and Texas, the first Senate bills introduced in their session were voter suppression. Could you just like quickly share what SB1 was like in Texas so folks can understand?
I'm sorry, who were you asking?
You.
Oh, okay. Let me find some of my notes, just a second. I don't want to get stuff incorrect. So our governor, by the way, who is a person with a mobility impairment in a wheelchair, Greg Abbott, signed SB1 into law on September 7th, 2021, following a second special legislation session. And it's pretty much an omnibus voter suppression package. I don't know how much you want of a rundown on this. Texas Senator Brian Hughes, a senator from Senate District Manula, which is 64.7% white in East Texas, authored the bill, characterizing it as an effort to protect election integrity and prevent fraud, even though there was no substantive evidence of fraud. The trial began on September 11th, 2023. Some of the provisions of SB1 empowered partisan poll watchers, enhanced confusing ID requirements for ballot by mail. It banned drive-through voting, which people are confusing with curbside voting. And so because it was put in the newspaper as banning drive-through voting, I've had a lot of people with disabilities think that that meant curbside. So that's something I'm always stressing. It banned 24-hour voting. It prohibits election officials from promoting voting by mail. It limited ballot drop-off locations for mail-in ballots. It limits the distribution of mail-in ballot applications. It limits and places possible penalties for voter assistance, including criminal felonies. There's an oath that poll workers seeking to maintain order at polling locations could be subject to criminal penalties. The trial, it was held in San Antonio at the United States District Court for the Western District of Texas. Judge Javier Rodriguez presided. My part that I testified about dealt with personal attendance assistance from personal attendants of our choosing. And there was an oath prior to that, but the revised oath had a very chilling effect. It placed criminal penalties on people, and I don't have that oath directly in front of me to give you guys a rundown. But because of all of this, 23,000 mail-in ballots were rejected. And of course, that was primarily in counties like Harris County that are, more diverse than other areas of Texas. So I don't know. It was kind of, we drove to San Antonio, testified. I know it was people from the ARC of Texas. I know Laura Halverson, who used to be with ADAPT, me, Bob, gosh, who else? I can't remember everyone else, but this beautiful new courthouse, but they were doing road work. So as I tried to get my chair up the ramp from the sidewalk to the courthouse, there was a giant pothole and my chair got stuck in it. This is an aside. And there's like a big truck coming my way. So that was added to the anxiety before testifying. But I did use that in my testimony. I brought that up to the judge. So yeah, it's been this year, and I mean, we've just been rolling. We have been doing stuff, but I still would like to get out and register more voters and attend more events. So I don't know. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much, Lydia. I think it's just I've gotten feedback from folks that it has been helpful to hear, what voter suppression laws or progressive voting laws look like in other states, because states learn from each other, from better or worse. And it's helpful for, like folks in Alabama, their voter suppression SB1 just passed this year, but you all have been battling this bill since 2021. So it might be helpful for them to hear kind of what's been your journey, what's been the effect, how have you battled it. So thank you for sharing that. And I will put that article in the chat that you referenced that kind of explains the bill, and it highlights multiple Rev Up Texas members, including you, Lydia. So thank you so much. And we have a question from Katie, it looks like. You can unmute, Katie.
I started talking with the mute on. Actually, I was gonna add SB1. We're hoping that gets thrown away. And they're doing HB 207 in place of it, as far as I'm understanding. And so it's still gonna have barriers, but the barriers are not gonna be as steep. They're gonna be able to choose an individual to help them. However, we're still not gonna have curbside voting, so that's still a barrier. So we're still gonna have some barriers, but with the HB 207 that we're hoping to get passed, it's gonna be better than the first one that we all have had trouble between Alabama and Texas.
Thank you so much, Katie. yeah, we will look forward to hearing more updates from you all about that bill. So I just see a message in the chat. We will read out any substantive chat messages, and all links I will send via email afterwards. The one I just put in the chat is really long and would be confusing to read out loud, so I will email it to everyone afterwards. So next up, we are going to go from the south all the way up north to Minnesota. So I will bring Jean on from Rev Up Minnesota. And then I also think we had someone, Nathan from Minnesota also submitted an update. So we'll go Jean and then Nathan if you are on.
Okay, yeah. Hi, my name is Gene Martinez. I'm the Legislative Advocacy Coordinator at the ARC Minnesota, and also the coordinator for Rev Up MN. And we have 26 organizations that are part of Rev Up and participate in our movement here. And some of the things we've done so far this year, we formed a legislative committee to kind of monitor voting legislation at the legislature. And we wrote a letter in support of the Minnesota Voting Rights Act, which restores a private right of action for enforcing things under Section 2 of the Federal Voting Rights Act, which was just set aside by a Court of Appeals that covers Minnesota and will ultimately go to the Supreme Court. But we also had a presentation from our U.S. Attorney's Office on federal protection of voting rights. We had a presentation by Clean Elections Minnesota, which is kind of a nonprofit that works on expanding democracy and looking at things like ranked choice voting and other kind of measures to make our voting system more fair. We are partnering with Outfront Minnesota, an advocacy organization for the LGBTQ plus community, on a forum that we will do probably in the early summer or maybe during Pride Month around issues affecting individuals with disabilities who are part of Outfront Minnesota. And then I see Matt is on here. He works with Hennepin County, which is our largest county in Minnesota. And we're going to be working with them and a couple of other metro counties to have a demonstration of ballot marking machines at I believe, our July meeting of one of our self-advocacy groups. So we're excited about opening that event up to our Rev Up network and having people see the different ballot marking machines. We're in the process of scheduling our annual meeting that we have with Minnesota Secretary of State Steve Simon, and he does a forum with us every year reviewing everything related to voting in Minnesota and all the resources on the Secretary of State's website and assistance they can provide. We've put together a new Rev Up MN PowerPoint, which also kind of comprehensively covers voting and elections, and that PowerPoint will be made available to all the Rev Up MN organizations, and we will be using it internally with the ARC Minnesota. And we're just looking ahead to starting to plan voter and candidate engagement in the fall around the state with our Rev Up partners. And then I will be doing a webinar for the ARC of the United States on June 9th about voter engagement for ARC chapters, and I will certainly be mentioning that they should, join a REV UP chapter or start a REV UP chapter, and magnify our voice here that we have in this meeting. So I guess that's pretty much it for now.
This
Thank
is
you
Matt.
so much, Gene.
I can add to
Oh.
that if
Go ahead, Matt.
yeah. So yes, as Gene said, and thanks for all those updates, Gene. That was great. And you did briefly mention that yes, there will be a voting machine demonstration with one of the self-advocacy groups, which is with REV UP and the ARC coming up in July. And also because I as a blind person, I've been involved with REV UP and done voter advocacy work through the National Federation of the Blind in Minnesota. But I will also add that I also work on voting issues in my career for my day job. And right now, just starting just this last December of 23, mid-December, I started back here with Hennepin County elections. We actually have a dedicated voter outreach team, which I am working on as staff, and we are conducting outreach to, basically communities that have barriers to voting, including voters with disabilities. That's one of the projects I'm working on. We're reaching out to disability organizations, basically organizations serving people with disabilities, like the ARC and REV UP, for example. And we are going and like bringing out our voting machines and doing voting machine demonstrations on the Omni ballot and the express vote, which I think will be eventually replacing the Omni ballot. So we have those two machines we're using in the county right now. And yes, we're going out to organizations and giving voting machine demonstrations, as well as talking about accessible voting, and just letting people know, this is how accessible voting works with, like, curbside voting, getting help voting, the accessible absentee voting, which isn't quite fully accessible yet. We have the same issue with the, printing out the ballot, but it's a start. And so, we're going out as a county and bringing that information out there to the voters, and making sure that they are aware of all of their options. And we're working with other populations as well, homeless voters experiencing homelessness, veterans, basically any population that has a high barrier to voting. Yeah, we're doing all that. And yeah, I should mention too. So yes, if you're other states, check with your county. Your county may have, like Hennepin County here in Minnesota, a dedicated voter outreach person, or even a voter outreach team like we have, that could come out and demonstrate the accessible voting machine that your county uses, or give you a presentation. I think that's worth looking into for people to see if your county actually offers something like we do here in Hennepin County in Minnesota.
So Alexia, thank you, Matt. That is great to hear that we have some local election officials in our REV UP coalitions. Thank you so much for your work. And yeah, if that is something that doesn't exist in your county, perhaps it's something that you would be able to advocate for. So thank you for sharing that update. We have 4 more submitted updates so far. And so I just want to give a heads up on timing. We have about 35 minutes left, but we like to leave time for questions. So just a heads up on that timing. But our next coalition. Oh, and I want to read in the chat that Nathan from Minnesota said that he accidentally submitted an update, so we're not going to call on him. Sorry, Nathan. Okay, so we're going to go back to the South next. For South Carolina, we will bring Macy on.
Hi, everyone. This is my first time joining into the quarterly calls. We just joined back as the REV UP Coalition for South Carolina a few months ago. We're very happy to be back. The operating stipend is going to good use. We've already started having ASL interpretation at our meetings, and that's allowed us to have more groups join us who that accessibility barrier before prevented them from joining. So already it's going pretty well for South Carolina. We've been plugging away at outreach and registration events. We're trying to focus outside of our metropolitan areas. We have a lot of rural space in South Carolina, and so we're trying to be intentional about hosting events in those communities. We've had a couple here in the North Charleston area, and we're doing some, I won't go into specifics, that's not really helpful, but we're doing more of those. Couple more throughout the rest between now and the June primaries. Let's see. I guess the big thing that we did recently, we just worked on a report with our election protection group through the NAACP with Legal Defense Fund on the state of accessibility in South Carolina from our monitoring efforts. And we were able to participate in a listening session the DOJ hosted about accessibility issues. And we were able to present that report there, which was great. We had advocates from across the state share their personal experiences about voting in the state and what they've experienced. And I think it was really nice to see everybody working together. That was awesome. Let's see. Yeah, so we're just, like I said, newer to this space and excited to hear what everybody else is doing. I've been taking a bunch of notes about project ideas from what's happening across the country. So thank you, Alexia, for having us.
Thank you so much, Macy, and thank you for those updates. I love to hear the collaboration with election protection. That is fantastic. Okay, so next up we have updates from REV UP Georgia. I know Jessica wasn't able to join. Do we have someone else on from REV UP Georgia that wants to share their updates? And Karen Jones from Alabama, REV UP Alabama, put in the chat, I love that, the state of accessibility. All right, I'm going to pause another minute. Just if you're here from REV UP Georgia, give a holler, come on camera.
Hi, this is Bernicia Shannon. We've
Hey,
been working on
Bernicia.
digital accessibility. We have one county that's already doing it, and then we're working on their website for digital accessibility now, which is new to them, but accessibility is important to them. We have a Commission on Disability Affairs that's been around since the ADA was established. So that's the update on this digital accessibility in Fulton County, Georgia.
Thank you so much, Bernicia. That is great, especially with that web accessibility rule recently being passed. And then Zan put in the chat, Georgia Rev Up has ASL now. Thank you, AAPD, for meetings. Yay, thank you. And Zan, did you want to provide any updates on your work? Not to put you on the spot, but just wanted to give you space if you want to. Oh, I'll see you, Zan.
I don't know if you can hear me. It says mute, Zan. We have 300 rides. We've provided 300 rides up to date to this date. And I'm sorry. Thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. That is fantastic. You're shy. That's okay. Thank you, Zan. Maybe Zan is camera shy, but not a shy advocate. Okay, thank you, Zan. All right. Okay, next up we had Denise from Missouri had some updates. Are you on, Denise? Okay, I'm not sure if Denise was able to make it. I want to read in the chat. Karen from Jones from Alabama said, I am definitely about to ask our probate judge and circuit clerk to join our coalition. Great idea. Making those connections can be really helpful. And if they won't join the coalition, maybe they will attend a meeting or meet with you. Okay, and next we had an update from Hawaii. Rainey, are you on?
This is April. I don't see Rainey's name.
Okay, thank you, April. Okay, no worries. I'm gonna pause here. We have about 30 minutes left, so I want to pause to see if we have any questions or comments so far. And then I know a couple of folks have messaged me in the chat that they did have updates. I have a hard time keeping track of the chat when I'm facilitating, so I'm gonna pause for questions, and then if you had an update but didn't submit it in the form, just go ahead and raise your hand or put your name in the general chat or message events AAPD so we can catch you because I lose track. But I saw, Besa, you had a question?
Hi, Alexia. Hi, everyone. So glad to be here with all of you. Thank you for all the work that we're all doing together to address these systems of oppression, right? So my question comes, I am an organizer and the executive director for Society of the Flora, Fauna, and Friend. And we are on the floor doing translocal work locally and statewide. And we've been doing this for a while, and I filled out the form on joining as a coalition group, but I haven't gotten a response, and I've already filled out the form 3 times. So, and we have actually a very strong outreach because we're part of 40 coalitions nationwide and 16 Florida advocacy groups. So we want to join.
Thank
And
you.
I've
Thank
spoken to
you.
you via email before because I hosted one
Yes.
of the Voter Week events.
Yes, I definitely remember you and your organization. I apologize. I think there are some outdated forms floating around just because Rev Up has been on a while and we've had organizer changes and staff changes. There is a Rev Up coalition in Florida that I can get you connected to if you want to join them, or if it makes sense to have a more localized coalition, because some states have that, like there is a Rev Up Pennsylvania and a Rev Up Philadelphia, just because Philadelphia is such a different community than a lot of the rest of Pennsylvania. So it really made sense for them to have 2 coalitions. So I'm happy to talk more to you, but I will email you after this call and we can talk a little bit more. But thank you for being here and for all the work that you are doing. And I love you. Besa has a background full of different plants in tubes of water, and it looks very cool.
Thank you. They're real, by the way.
Amazing.
Bye.
Okay, and I think I see Alicia, you have your hand up.
Yes. I have exciting news. First off, Alexia is going to be helping me form a Rev Up for Oklahoma. I'm going to be getting some of my contacts together. She's going to be getting some of hers. And some of my contacts are some of my husband's relatives and the tribes and everything, because my husband's full-blood Native American. So I want to be, and I've already reached out to the tribes he's descended from. So I'll be getting them together and reaching out to more of the tribes. And then also with the podcast, and I'm not doing it 3 days a week and everything, because I'm entering that time of a woman's life where
Alicia, can you share what your podcast is for people who might not know
yeah,
if they haven't met you?
I'm going to be getting into that. The podcast, which I will get into, I was doing it 3 days a week, but I'm only going to be able to do it 1 day a week. And then the chat on Facebook 1 day a week. As every woman knows, which I'm unfortunately learning now in my early 40s, is the lovely stage of perimenopause, and it stinks. And so it's kind of making life disgruntled right now. And so getting everything figured out with that stuff and my health and everything. But I've got everything organized on Fridays. Well, first off, Wednesdays, just for chat, just to chat about discussions and everything, and to come up with solutions, have discussions on everything and about the subject matter on my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/dancer.survives. It's to, like, for traumatic brain survivors, those with disabilities, to come together, to come and discuss everything. And then Fridays on my YouTube channel, on my podcast, at youtube.com/TBI Raiders. For, I always highlight those with traumatic brain injury, and I don't specify like any disability in particular, because if you have a TBI, you notice that once you sustain a TBI, you're going to acquire a different disability, if not immediately, somewhere down the line. And then it's just going to kind of go on and on. If you remember that show, Lamb Chops, and the song that would play at the end of the show, this is the song that doesn't end. Yes, it goes on and on, my friend. Well, it's kind of like that with TBI. It's a never ending revolution with kind of get one health problem either year after year, day after day, or year goes by, 5 years go by, 10 years go by, wham! And you're like, huh? Okay. But as for the themes, April and May is health and wellness. June and July is register to vote, party affiliation / voting for your candidate. August and September is family and employment. October and November is veterans and service members. December is disability. Then the weeks of the month has a theme itself, just to I need structure to kind of keep myself focused on everything. Week 1 is empowerment and voting. Week 2 is advocacy and support groups. Week 3 is legislation. Week 4 is sports and recreation. And I contacted Special Olympics of Oklahoma, and I'm hoping I get a call or something, or if somebody has something on sports in your state, please send it to me. I sent Alexia my email. I also sent her information about everything I just told you guys that she can send you all. And please reach out to me so I can start sharing what's going on in your state. I can even start sharing about the legislation, the struggles you guys are having. We can pop you guys on, and I can invite you guys on to come on my YouTube or my Facebook channel, and we can start building up the channel and everything, and let's get our community going. And I know some of my I'm actually friends with people that are in office at both the state and congressional level for Oklahoma. And well, I'll kind of put a buzz in their ear if we kind of get stuff going. So I'll put a buzz in their ear and I'll go, hey, we got so-and-so stuff from, especially if it's Congress, I'll go, we got a little buzz in this going on this state. So you might want to, if it's in your party, you might want to reach out to this state, especially if they have a candidate running against them, or it's your party that's got a candidate running. You might want to come on and listen, because if you want to
Yeah.
win,
I
you
love
want to
that,
come listen.
Alicia. You are so great at those legislative relationships. And I want to highlight a couple things in the chat. Zan from Georgia said, yeah, Oklahoma, from another native. Karen is resonating. She said, welcome to my world of Perry Paws. It's been a journey. And Carrie Carlson from Rev Up Tennessee said, I would love the link for your Facebook page. I'm a brain injury specialist in Tennessee, and we love sharing these resources. So I'll definitely share what you've sent me, Alicia, but feel free to put it in the chat as well for folks. And then Megan Colucci from Rev Up North Carolina shared that she wrote 2 articles for a Substack. One is about accessible organizing, and the other is for accessible get out the vote. So we'll make sure to share those links out to everyone after this call as well. Thank you for sharing. Oh, it's actually Pam and under Megan's account. You really confused me there. Okay. We got our Rev Up North Carolina folks. That's all that matters. We know. Okay. So it is 4:11. So I wanted to share a couple of next steps, or what's next from Rev Up, and then we will be able to spend some more time with other updates that folks have, or questions for each other, for us, comments for each other, for us. And Alicia, I think you messaged that just to me. So if you want to put it where it says everyone, that way they can grab your link. But I'm going to share, let's see. Dwayne, are you able to share your screen with our last slide, or do you want me to share it? We can actually just go right through it. So I want to make sure that everybody knows and has on your calendar the date for our next national call is August 29th, 3 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And when you register on that link, make sure that you get a confirmation email, because if you don't, that might mean you have like a typo in your email. And we don't always catch that. And I want to make sure people get the link. So make sure you get a confirmation email. And if you don't, just register again. And then in that meeting, we'll probably spend a lot of time talking about Disability Voting Rights Week, which is September 9th through the 13th this year. But we know having those materials, we've gotten feedback from folks that having the materials earlier is really helpful for them. So we are planning to make public, send out, share. Maybe we'll schedule another like in between meeting call in mid-May to we'll have some materials for Disability Voting Rights Week in mid-May. And then with Dwayne as our civic engagement manager at AAPD, we're able to be building out some more resources with Dwayne's expertise. So we are working on creating a Slack that we're going to try out for our Rev Up members so that you can connect to each other easier across states. If you've never used Slack before, don't worry. We're going to have a training and resources. We'll review some accessibility features of the Slack. And it also won't be our only way to stay connected. So if you don't like it or it doesn't work for you, we'll still have these national calls. We'll still have emails and other opportunities. But it's just another way to build our community. We're also working on a directory to help you better connect to each other if you're in coalitions. And then Dwayne is also working on a one-pager with information about legislation related to elections in 2024. So lots of good things coming. And just anticipating this question, yes, we will have swag again for Disability Voting Rights Week. And we'll send that link out in late July or early August. So that if you're hosting an event for Disability Voting Rights Week, which I hope you are, we will be able to send you more swag again. Okay, so those were my final updates that I wanted to make sure to share with you all. So we have about 15 minutes left. So if anyone had any final updates they wanted to share, any questions for each other, any comments for each other. And I see in the chat, Zan said, yeah, training Slack. We love to see it. And then Zare also asked, can you ask Stacy for a Georgia Rev update? Is Stacy Ramirez on?
Hi there. Yes, I am here.
Oh, okay. Are you okay? Let me add you. Stacy, do you want to share a quick update from Rev Up Georgia? We heard a little bit from Bernicia about the work that she's doing on digital accessibility. We put Zan on the spot against their will, maybe, to hear about their accessible rides. But if you want to share some more Rev Up Georgia updates, we'd love to hear it. And then we'll go to Pam, who is not Megan.
I'll make it quick. The two big things I want to talk, well, three, because Zan's on the call with us. And so accessible rides to the polls are going to be a must in Georgia, especially in rural areas. I'm sure that's similar to across the nation, but in rural Georgia, it's just dismal with transportation. The other two things I want to say, there's so much going on, but summary is, if you've not heard the name Derek Hurd, you need to. He is a young man. I'll just call it a young Black man. So a young person of color with autism who does amazing artwork for voting rights. His passion is around voting rights. I know Alexia talks with him quite often. We're working on some other funding to get him bigger and better. So he will do most of our graphics in Georgia. Doing a plug, it's not just Georgia that he works with. So he's got a contract right now with Harvard. The other thing I wanted to mention, Alexia, you talked about the Voting Rights Week. We've got Tootle, Stan Tootle does Tuesdays with Tootle every Tuesday and has some great presentations. But during that week, he's going to do 30 minutes every day. So it's going to be Tuesday with Tootle every day. And he's going to have people like we're contacting the Secretary of State, we're contacting the ADA coordinator, and just those larger names for two reasons. One, we want to hear from them, but the second is we want them to better understand our needs as people with disabilities to get to the polls. So those were the two things outside of just already Vernitia that you've heard from and Zan. So Derek Hurd, and thank you for putting that in the chat, Alexia. And then Tuesdays with Tootle, I'll get you those links, Alexia. So if other people wanted to join us, he's fantastic. Thank you.
This is Alexia. Thank you, Stacy. Yes, if you can share the Tuesdays with Tootle link, we will share it. I did not have that one as ready to plug in. Okay, next we're gonna have Pam up. And just a reminder, we've got about 10 minutes remaining. I'm not trying to count down. I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. All right, go for it, Pam.
Thank you. I'm Pamela, not Megan. But Megan is part of our small but mighty team, and we're growing every day. I'm hoping that Deborah, who's on this call, will be part of our team as well. At this point, there's 4 of us, but we're working on relationships here in North Carolina with Rev Up NC. We have been on calls with an IDD self-advocate, other self-advocates talking about voting issues for persons with disabilities, also with other organizations. One of the things that I found really interesting is the gentleman from Minnesota. Here in North Carolina, we had a law that persons in like congregate living situations had to go through the Board of Elections for what they called a multi-partisan assistance team. That law has been struck down, and we're trying to be on the forefront of what it means in North Carolina now for persons in these congregate living facilities to request for people to come in and do voting, Rev Up work. So that's one of the things that we're working on here in Rev Up, and just building our partnership, showing up in Pride, showing up in a lot of, so we're trying to be visible, that's what we're all about. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I put in the Slack the links to the two things that I wrote for a group, a Substack called Grassroots Collaboration Project. And I did one on how you can be an organizer. Where it's not fully accessible yet, but it's accessible for a lot of people to organize from home, just like we're on the Zoom call, making phone calls, doing text banks. I think one of the issues that we're having is I'm looking into readers that might work, and I don't know if there's any readers that will work, but for other, we have a lot of, it's mostly accessible. And then I wanted to bring attention to the greater public of how important it is for when you're doing get out the vote in a general population, to try to figure out how to reach out to voters with disabilities early on to identify issues like rights and such, if they would need any help with vote by mail, etc. I'm trying to think if there's anything else because I want to wrap this up. Nope, I think that's about it. We're brand new and we're just starting to go. So anyone in North Carolina, it's going to be a very active election cycle in North Carolina.
This is Alexia. No kidding, Pam. Thank you so much for those updates. That was really helpful to hear. And thank you so much for your work. And I see some other Rev Up North Carolina folks are on the call too. So thank you all so much for all that you are doing. Okay, so we've got about 8 minutes left. I know I keep counting us down. Okay. Let's see. I think I see in the chat, Michael Ring can share an update about some New York City work. Michael, do you want to come on?
Sure. My name is Michael. A short visual description for those who need it. I'm a 60-year-old white guy with glasses and a green T-shirt. And I'm part of Rev Up in New York State, and I'm part of ADAPT and Disabled in Action. And we just started working on an idea that might apply across the country. In New York City, the ballot marking device is it's a separate machine. It's a standalone machine that you slide your ballot in, and the information appears on a screen. So you could touch screen your vote. You can use a mouse, a sip and puff, all sorts of just accessible devices. It also translates and reads back to you in whatever language is allowed. But no one knows about it, and the poll workers often don't set it up. I'm an election day worker myself, and I've found out that in many places it's a big coat rack. I also, where I vote and where I work, I live around the corner from Chuck Schumer. And I realize when he comes in and votes, everybody watches him. And, I'm in Park Slope, Brooklyn. I have a lot of celebrity neighbors. So we're trying to start a thing where people reach out to their famous or elected neighbors and friends and encourage them to use the ballot marking device. Because you don't have to be disabled to use it. You can just want to use it. And we're realizing that if someone who's a little bit famous, an actor, a singer, or an elected official uses it, everyone watches. Sometimes the media takes their picture when they're voting. Someone wants me to explain what a coat rack is. It means because in November in New York City, it's cold, and sometimes all the election day workers will just leave their coats on the ballot marking device because it's not the ground. often people with disabilities come in to vote and no, the ballot marking device isn't turned on, or it's not opened up. But if we stress the system a little and say, you know, if you know someone famous and can talk to them, ask them if it's not a crazy election, you know, we don't want disruption. Ask them to use the ballot marking device. Maybe that'll encourage the Board of Elections in their community to train people a little better and have it operating. Not every community has a separate machine, but in New York City, you know, we have 1,200 polling places and they all have their own ballot marking device. And sometimes people walk or roll into the election place and they can't vote because no one turned on the machine or no one knows how to operate it. So we thought we'd shake it up a little. That's about it.
Alexia. Thank you so much, Michael. That was a great kind of overview and a really cool campaign that Rev Up New York is doing. And I think you all have a letter, right, that you are using to encourage this. Can we maybe share that? Can I share that in my email afterwards? Do you have anything else I should share?
I don't have the letter myself. I missed the last few meetings, but I'm here.
I have
So
a
I just
copy
thought
of
I'd
the
bring it.
letter, no worries, but
I was
it was
supposed to
a
help
trick
write it,
question. I
but
just wanted you to
I
share that
got
you had a letter.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Great. And Jenny put a great resource in the chat. She said anyone can report violations and barriers by calling 1-866-hour. Yeah. Our OUR, yep, dash vote, VOTE. Yes, and I will include that, and I will also say that the National Association of the Deaf also has a hotline on election day that you can call if you need to use a video call. There's also lines in Spanish and other languages, and the protection and advocacy agencies also have voter lines. And I would also encourage people that if you experience these issues on election day, definitely call those in the moment for help, but then afterwards report your experience as a civil rights violation with the Department of Justice. That sounds very scary, but it's really not. It's just sharing that information, and it's really important and helpful. And it's pretty easy to do. So I will include those in my follow-up email. But we've got 2 minutes left. So I just want to take a moment to thank everyone so much for being here, for all of the work that you are doing across the country. We have so many states represented on this call today. And thank you so much. We'll share the recording once it's up. And I will send a follow-up email tomorrow or early next week with all of the very many links and helpful information that was shared here today. So thank you so much, everyone. And I hope you have a good rest of your afternoon and evening. And we will see you soon.
See you all.